Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm always very, very happy to have Colette Walker back here on the podcast. She's going to be giving us some updates on what's happening with the Freeports and SEZs. And secondly, all about the endeavours of ISP and the Liberate Scotland movement. But firstly, we just want to talk about a general picture, just so we can get an idea before we head into the Freeports and before we head into the Scottish constitutional question. I was just speaking to Colette before, just briefly about this. There's a bad, I would call it a very ominous looking travel of direction lately. That's growing or it's exacerbating. Our foreign policy is terrible. You know, we are literally complicit in a genocide in Gaza. We have the MI6 attacking the Russian strategic bombers. We have all the stuff going on in Iran, in Ukraine. And then, of course, on the domestic front, and it's obviously linked to this, we're having our rights taken away from protest, Palestine Action being prescribed a terrorist organization. I mean, that in itself, you know, it's just shocking. And then, of course, we have the economic policy, and this is where obviously Colette will give us some more details about this, because it's very, very important. Because once again, this is all interlinked, you know, through the economy, through free ports and stuff like this. So, would you give your picture of how you see the free ports and the SEZs, how it blends into this bigger picture of the foreign policy, of domestic policy, and of course we're all talking UK here because it's not Scottish. Scottish can't do anything about this. We are part of the UK economy, and we're tied to all this. So one of the things I'd like to get to, I mentioned this the other day, is to me Scottish independence is so imperative, so we can literally get away from this toxic union, because that's what it is, and this is kind of what I want to get to here. So can you just give me your sort of understanding of the situation, and how maybe you think that the free ports, corporations and stuff, and the state all ties into this? What's your idea of how this links?
Oh, good morning, Eddie. Thanks for that very simplistic question there.
Yeah.
You don't beat about the bush, do you? And it's a lovely sunny Friday morning.
No, at last.
I know. I think I was a wee bit too worried about the well-being of my guide dog today, and not being able to go to a meeting tonight because it's going to be far too warm to workers. So, you know, there's all these pitfalls with you have a lovely day, but sometimes you can't actually get out because it's too warm, because you've got to think of other people and other things as well. So regarding what's happening, sadly, Scotland is in this fictional union, and Scotland has a completely different political mindset, really, and we would be avoiding any type of war or association with war as much as we possibly could. But because of the situation that we are in, we are getting almost dragged into things that are just not what we would be wanting to do. We don't have any powers to stop what's happening. As you said, the only way we could possibly have any more say or negotiations or influence is if we were independent. The only people that do profit from any kind of war, and there is lots going on at the present moment, as we all know. I don't have to go over who's at war and why they're at war. We see it every single day, and we have for many years now. But the only people that profit are the particular governments and the manufacturers and companies that are actually supplying these weapons of mass destruction. So it's a almost profit-making scheme. And again, a bit like what's happening with our own economy on a personal level. It's the private companies that are profiting, and it's the people, the innocent people of that land, who are actually the ones that are suffering. And obviously in the war-torn countries, they are suffering on a multitude of levels, whether it's hunger, whether it is injuries, but also their lives and their families' lives and everything that comes with that. They're losing their homes, they're losing their livelihoods, and they're basically, their families are being destroyed and having to live with the aftermath of that. And it's also living with, what is their future? Do they have a future? There's that uncertainty, it's that suffering, it's not only just the, actually to watch somebody who is in so much pain and they don't have the proper medical treatment to actually eat. We all know what it's like to have a family member going through an operation here in Scotland, using our NHS, and they're well looked after. If they are in pain, they get pain relief, and they get as much care and attention as required. That's not happening there. So you're actually having to witness not only what's surrounding you with the war and the destruction around you, but actually to watch a loved one in so much pain and you can't do anything about it. That in itself is an act of terrorism as well on your brain. That is torture. That is a form of torture. That's never going to leave these people, no matter if the war stopped today. Those images, and I've said this before, I said it on the Norrie Hunter show a couple of years ago. Sometimes for myself, being visually impaired, I don't watch an awful lot of the videos that come up on your social platforms or on the TV. I might just be listening to certain articles, etc. Because sometimes when you see something, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
Yes.
And in a way, I made a remark, and it wasn't being facetious or anything, but sometimes there is a positive to being visually impaired, and one of them is that I don't sometimes have to see these traumatic images that are branded about on your social media or on the news, because these families are never ever going to get over what they've witnessed. And especially if you're a young person, you've got your whole life ahead of you, and what you've heard and what you've seen, there's going to be a massive mental health issue as well. So again, it's always the innocent person. The private global companies, no matter whether it's in a war-torn area or likes of here in Scotland, they're always the ones that are going to be pocketing the profits, and it's the residents of the land that are the ones that are basically getting poorer. They're the ones that are going to be damaged by this whole situation. So they are aligned. And again, with the Freeports, Freeports have always been known, even the ones that are regulated in the EU, and again, ours are different because they're deregulated. Even the ones in the EU, they're trying to get rid of them in the EU as well, because there's still a lot happening regarding smuggling, people trafficking. They'll try anyway to do it. So ours are deregulated. So we don't know, how can we govern and how can we actually see what's getting taken from a Freeport to a Freeport? Who's regulating this with our Freeports? So we don't know actually, are our Freeports being used for war crime weapons? We don't know.
Well, there's nothing to stop them being so, is there?
Nothing to stop it. Are they going to put that on the news? Because they don't even speak about our Freeports on the news as it is.
Yeah.
It's not even down as a good news story. So if they're not even mentioned as a good news economic story, they're certainly not going to put something in the news about war weapons being transported between a free port to a free port in an unregulated zone. So it is quite worrying that we actually won't know the facts. And I don't work on ideology at all. You know, we do a lot of research in the Freeports team. It's not maybes and ifs and what abouts. We're looking to things. So, but you obviously do still have concerns. You will think this could be potentially something that could be used to the company's benefit, but to the people's detriment.
And if we look at past records, that's exactly what happens. I mean, would you agree? I mean, in simpler terms, you know, you might hear it referred to as the military-industrial complex, using profits there, but it's the same with the free ports. You know, we might be invading. You know, people say, you know, we want to invade Iran for the oil. Probably true. We invade it for strategic purposes. Probably true, but it's all about profit, and the people, the victims you're talking about is the collateral damage. But would you agree with me? There's also that impetus abroad, but it's also here domestically, you know, and it always is. There's always that threat of privatization, and what and for me, the democratic aspect of it is waning so badly. I mean, I've looked at quite a few polls. 80%, I think, of the UK, 80 plus, I think, in some polls, are against, you know, the genocide, and they call it a genocide. But what happens is we have a UK government that doesn't represent that view at all, and I think the same happens with stuff like this, with free ports and stuff. And it's almost like, while all this is going on, while the foreign catastrophes are going on, and the foreign policies, it's almost like this economic policy now, you know, these free ports and stuff can just sort of go ahead and, like you said, not even be on the news, not even be worth talking about. But I think we've said this before when you've been on before, and I recommend people to look back maybe on a couple of interviews I've had with you before to get some more detail about how the free ports work. But essentially, it's about profits. It's not about anything other than that. Labor rights, everything is out the window when it comes to this privatization, and we just and the premise is that, I think, if you'd like to speak a bit more on this as well, is that, you know, these private companies, they don't have to do anything. They just say, oh, we'll look after our employees very well, trust us. And of course there's nothing there at all. I mean, as if they're going to do that out of the goodness of their hearts. It's all about profits, as you know. So even domestically, you know, with the free ports that we have already, they're taking their resources out and using the profits. So the services go down, the quality of the services go down, and the prices go up. So what can you tell us about what's happening now with the free ports? Is there any changes? Is there anything new you're seeing happening, or any movements of people being able to try to stop it?
So there is a lot there, and again, we do public meetings once a month, and you know, we could probably talk forever, because we've been doing this at the Freeports team for over 2 years now, and travelling around the country, and you know, we are finding out things all the time. But we try and keep it, because again, still an awful lot of people don't know about Freeports, or where the free ports are, or where the special economic zones are, or what is a special economic zone? Is it different from a free port? Or you know, how is it free? Or because now the Scottish government have put green in front of it. Well, I just won't put green in front of it. That's gaslighting me, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing green about them, and there's nothing free about them. So it's utter gaslighting and smoke and mirrors, as far as I'm concerned. So really, right now, still 2 years on, we are still going around holding these public meetings to try and educate people on exactly what they are, and, you know, what they are, and 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 what they are going to do and not do for Scotland. Now, again, as you say, I've spoken about it a few times on this podcast with you. But one thing that we really need to understand is that our free ports, the Scottish ones are no different to the English ones or the Welsh ones. And that, again, is something that the Scottish Government try and make out that they're different because they put green in front of it and they say that they seemingly, the businesses that come on board have to sign up to the Fair Work agenda and the living wage, etc. The Green Freeport, we did not need a Freeport to start doing the renewable transitions. Scotland already has all those renewable natural resources to work from. We have, the tidal, we have wind, etc., etc. We've got all those natural resources. We did not need to make our land as part of a Freeport or a special economic zone. Companies could come and actually set up if they wish to in Scotland. But again, it really should have been to the benefit to the people of Scotland, not a profit-making scheme, which one it is because we are tied to this fictional union with Westminster. Plus, the energy is a reserved matter. Funny that energy is a reserved matter and we don't have control of our own energy, our own natural free-flowing energy. But really, the green bit is wrong. We could have existed and carried on with a very good transition structure and welcomed lots of companies to come and utilise our natural resources and use very different methods that are being used, like we're researching just now. Lots of ISP and the Freeports are looking into lots of different, like what Norway do, the different offshore wind turbines and their different structures, and they're magnificent things. They don't have to take up the land and your scenery and destroy the land, etc. So there's that. So the green doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. We don't need a Freeport to call it green, and it's not green. But also the Freeport, there's really nothing free about it because, again, they are not regulated as they are in the EU. In the EU, Freeports are publicly owned. Ours aren't. It's public money going into private companies. So it's basically the private companies then come and do what they want. And again, with Freeports, they don't have to obey the law of the land that they're situated on. So it's a completely different structure. And the reason why we're trying to emphasise this, because people try and say, oh, they're different from English or whatever. They're not. They can't compete with each other. They have to be aligned because, again, Freeports are reserved matter. Do you think Westminster would allow our Freeports to be more beneficial if they could be beneficial to the ones in England? That wouldn't happen. But also, ours are different and they are deregulated because they needed to get Brexit, as we all know, the terminology, Brexit done. We heard it all the time. And it's now coming to fruition why that terminology was very clear. We need Brexit done, because if they didn't get Brexit done the way they needed it to be done, not a Theresa May Canadian style, still part maybe of the single market or whatever, they needed fully out to bring in these deregulated free ports. And again, people go, they'll say, oh, but that's nonsense. No, it's not, because then you've got the evidence that Northern Ireland do not have these free ports because they're not allowed to, because with the Brexit deal that they got, they're still part of the single market. And the EU will not allow privately owned, non-public owned, deregulated free ports. That's why Northern Ireland don't have them. And that's why Scotland, Wales and England do, because we did not get that same settlement. So, and again with the companies coming, who are getting lots of money to come and seemingly invest in these zones.
Mm-hmm.
In Scotland, they're saying, oh, they have to sign up to the Fair Work agenda. And I just said this at our last meeting in Leith a couple of weeks ago, that a couple of unions, Unite and Unison, and I've already put it on social media a few times. Actually, I captured the phrase that they used. Even they looked at the contract, and it says they may sign up to the Fair Work agenda. May, and that's
It's not good enough, is it?
That's significant. You know, these documents and contracts are quite heavy reading. You know, they could be, 50, 70, 100, 300 pages long. They know that nobody really is going to sit and look through all of that. You know, they know that. They'll maybe skim through a few pages and then get fed up and not look at it. So they put in the nice wee glossy bits at the start, and then it gets into the wee fine print. But they may sign up. But even if they do sign up, employment law is reserved to Westminster again. Freeports is a reserved matter. What is the Scottish Government then? What powers do they have to then do anything about a company that does not abide by the Fair Work agenda in Scotland? They don't have the powers.
And it's not forced to, yeah, and it's not legally obliged to.
They're not legally obliged. No, and they, again, with being deregulated, the companies do not have to work and abide by the law of the land that their building or their whatever is situated on our land.
Mm-hmm. I think it's safe to say, like you said about Brexit. I mean, one of the things that even I was aware of course, is like once Brexit comes in, of course, there's all that room for manoeuvre with deregulation, like you said, and the free ports and that coming in. So I do think that is the agenda. So I remember you saying before as well, though, there's a problem. So would I be right in saying then that's the usual MO? They're saying that because we want to lure sort of foreign investment to come in, But I'm sure you've said before, there seems to be a problem with that it's not working out quite well as they'd hoped at the moment.
No, it's not. And, when we're saying foreign companies, so it is foreign companies a lot of the time that are coming in. And again, they promise all these jobs, and, it's something that we speak about a lot, because I look into every area that we go to for a public meeting. I always look at the council's budget.
Right.
I look into the unemployment rates of that area, look at what how many jobs were possibly promised within the Freeport or special economic zone. So we do a lot of work into looking into the things. Now, a lot of the time when we look into that, we see that the jobs that are promised, there isn't even that amount of people that are actually unemployed in that area anyway. So that just doesn't add up. It's ridiculous. And again, even with the two Freeports, initially in around about 2023, we were promised almost like 75,000 jobs within the two Freeports. We've hardly got that unemployed in Scotland. Never mind then in the special economic zone in Glasgow, which takes up 8 regions, council regions. They were promising us, and I'll come on to this in a wee second because it's actually very significant, the Glasgow Special Economic Zone that only happened yesterday. But the Glasgow Special Economic Zone was £1.2 billion invested in that initiative. And it was promised 29,000 jobs. So if you added the 29,000 jobs to the 75,000 jobs that we were promised with the two Freeports, never mind the North East Special Economic Zone, because they actually haven't we can't find an actual figure and a job opportunity figure as such for I think maybe they learned the lesson not to put a number, because then we can then say, well, how many of you employed. But if you add in the 2 Freeports and the special economic zone in Glasgow, you're talking 100,000 jobs. We don't have 100,000 people employed in Scotland. And are you then going to try and tell me that all these people, no disrespect, are going to be qualified or able to do the jobs that they're saying, you know, these high quality, professional, high paid jobs within a Freeport? Now, we do have unemployment, yes, and people need to find jobs, but we don't want them to be exploited with zero contract hours. We do want them to have proper employment law, workers' rights, health and safety, everything that, equality rights, everything that, you know, people like myself have been campaigning and lobbying about for decades, to get us to a standard that we hope that the majority of people that are working within Scotland are going to be looked after and their families are going to be looked after. That's not the case with the Freeports. Now, for example, they talk about the special economic zones in Freeports going to be this big economic prosperity, you know, big rainbow, pot of gold at the end of it, etc., etc. It's going to be fantastic, you know, great for employment, great for the community, great for standard of living. Now, last October, we done a public meeting in Glasgow, and again, we done a lot of research to do with the Glasgow Special Economic Zone, and again, I done the unemployment rate, etc., etc. So again, as I said a couple of minutes ago, £1.2 billion has been invested, and that comes from Westminster and the Scottish Government. But what you have to understand is that's public money.
Yeah.
But it's already, we speak about this a lot, that when they say it's Westminster funding or investing in stuff to do with Scotland, it's actually our own Scottish money. It's our revenue that's been sent down to them by all our reserve matter taxes. So they're actually not giving us any money that we haven't already produced on our own backs. We're only just getting the money back. So Westminster really aren't investing in Scotland. It's Scotland's money, but it's actually your public purse money. So just remember that. Now, the special economics in Glasgow, it was supposed to be, you know, making Glasgow vibrant and all these new initiatives, etc. And obviously we're seeing things like new cycle lanes, etc., getting put down. They're doing they're doing up George Square, etc. And that's fine. Maybe things do need to be redeveloped and modernised and utilised in different ways, because modern society does change. I do understand that. But then it came on the news last night, and again, I've said this before, I think obviously everything that I do, whether it's politically or with the Freeports, it's a 24/7 thing with me, because you put on the news and you hear an article that the waterfront houses at the Clyde, just across from Broomelaw, the houses there, I think they were built before 2014. The wall, the passageway, you used to be able to go over the Squinty Bridge and then walk along towards the quayside, to where all the Odeon and all that is. So you used to be able to come off and then walk along the Clyde. That's been blocked off for a good few years now, and it still is. And I didn't actually know. I only went towards it a few weeks ago, and I thought, God, that's still blocked off. You know, it's a real inconvenience, because then you've got to walk up onto Paisley Road West and walk up, and you would maybe on a nice night rather walk along the side of the Clyde. But anyway, this article last night on the news was saying that these houses that are at the start of this walkway, the actual wall structure that's separating their houses to the Clyde is actually all crumbling and gone. Now, there's subsidence already starting to happen within these buildings. They can't obviously sell their houses while it's in this situation. But then one of the residents that they were interviewing made a very valid point, and again, he said that the regional city deal, which is part of the special economic zone in Glasgow, the city regional deal, and again he quoted the £1 billion. He said that was supposed to have done the repair, but the cost went up during COVID, etc., and it's going to cost £45 million to get it fixed. He said, but they're too busy doing things like putting down cycle lanes and doing up George Square, instead of doing something that is a necessity to over 200 households. These are over 200 households that are going to potentially lose everything, lose their homes and lose their money, because they're not going to get any money back. The council, £45 million, okay, it's a lot of money, but it's pocket money when you consider the 1.2 billion that was invested. That's a scandal, because that's public money. And again, I reiterate this 1.2 billion is your taxpayer public money. And I think if it was either to do up George Square or to actually repair a structure and save over 200 houses, I think I know what I would spend the £45 million on.
That's several hundred people. I suppose it really does say a lot. I was going to ask you, but you completely probably answered the question there. I was going to ask you roughly where can you see that 1.2 billion has gone, but it looks to, like, I don't know, for want of a better expression, it's putting lipstick on the pig. It's like real structure, like you said, is not being used. So that says to me
it's
this is just about aesthetics, isn't it? It's about the optics, they call it these days.
We've discussed this a lot, that and we've asked the question, and we asked the question at nearly all our meetings, whether it's a regional deal or a special economic zone or a Freeport. Basically, all ties down the same thing. It's privatisation on steroids. And we ask at every single meeting to the people that attend, have you seen any benefit to your standard of living or your community or your local council being part of whatever initiative that we're discussing? And guess what? Not one person says yes.
I mean, it sounds a little bit like, to me, tell me if you think I'm completely off it, but it almost sounds to me like it's that first part of the propaganda. Here's 1.2 billion pounds from the public purse to try and make something look really attractive, but only on the external, not on the internal. Now, me and you know this is perfectly normal MO. And of course, one of the things is when you're talking about, here's 75,000 jobs, we have the same up here with all sorts of stuff, with the steel, with Gupta and stuff. And it's always, 10,000 jobs. Oh, no, it's 1,000 jobs. And then it's 600 jobs. And then no one's qualified for it. And it's just all the same, but there doesn't seem to be any way. I mean, I suppose it's free speech that a government, or a corporation might say, these are going to be the benefits. And they can literally just say anything they want. And then it seems to me that, like, one of the major things that you're doing is disproving that, and, and saying this is a lie. And it's almost like we have to spend so much time, you particularly, and other people like you, thank God, are doing what you're doing, that, make us aware that, this is essentially a con.
It is a con. It is a con. And as I say, it's just privatisation on steroids. Now, for example, a couple of things. The first one is up in the Highlands and Islands at Cromarty. It's a Japanese company who are doing high voltage cables, and they've got a contract, and again it's on the Freeport. And I know that Kate Forbes has spoke about this, and she said about how it's going to give 300 jobs, etc. So I looked into this company, and they're not just coming and said, oh, we want to run our business and produce high powered cables, etc. In Scotland, because the Highlands and Islands Council actually had to give tens of thousands of pounds towards this company coming to Scotland in the first place. So again, that's coming out of a budget. But again, the 300 jobs, when you look into the contract, it says we'll give 300 jobs, provide 300 jobs over 10 years. Again, it's the wording. You have to be this might go over a lot of people's heads, like they may sign up to the Fair Work agenda or over 10 years. It's not specifying that there will be 300 jobs for the whole of the 10 years. It could be 20 jobs for 6 months. It could be 100 jobs for 3 weeks. It might just be whatever they need at that very specific time. It could be 0 contract hours. Nobody's spoke about how much they're getting paid, what benefits they're actually getting. Are they getting their... Because again, the first 10 years in a Freeport, the companies don't have to pay national insurance. They get national insurance relief. They get business tax relief for the first 10 years. It's actually, if you're wanting to contribute to your national insurance, it will be actually the people that, that are actually working for that company that are going to have to just pay their own contribution out of the salary that they receive. So, but again, there was a by-election just a few weeks ago up in Cromarty, and Steve Chisholm, who is invested in the Freeports, he then made a speech, and he said about the 200 jobs. I thought, well, that's went down 100 from last year, just what you said there. But then you come on to the likes of the 4th and the 4th Freeport. Now that's a wee bit different to Cromarty because it's got 3 different local councils that are involved in this. So one of them being Edinburgh City Council. Now, we exposed this through the Edinburgh News last year, and it was last September. Now, the 4th Freeport only went live last June, July, the end of June, beginning of July. So you're talking September of last year, so only a couple of months of it being live. So the Edinburgh News done a story to actually expose that, one, the council had been promised £197 million of non-domestic rates through these Freeports, with this Freeport coming. By September, it went down to £107 million. So that's £90 million already wiped out within a couple of months.
Just wiped off as that.
Right, just like that, just gone, wiped out. The promise of jobs was 50,000. It's now down under 20,000. And again, I think it's going to be a lot less. And that's only within a couple of months. But the biggest thing was Edinburgh Council invested £80,000 to the Freeport. And again, within a couple of months, it had increased to £334,000. That's your public money. What else could that be getting used for in the city of Edinburgh or the surrounding area that Edinburgh Council deal with? So as far as we're concerned, this is why we are looking into this, because not everything in the greenhouse is rosy, and the roses aren't blooming. Believe me, they're not. And the Cromarty Firth and the 4th Freeport, they have now been live for a year. Now, you would have thought that after a year, there would have been some type of transparency to let us know how many companies have came, and invested in, the Freeport. Transparency over accounts for the financial year, the first financial year. What has been our return of our interest? We are seemingly investing. You hear that word investing. Well, if you invest any money, or if you invest your time and energy into anything, you possibly look for, what am I getting in return for that investment? You know, you don't open a bank account or an ISA or something and just say, oh, I'm going to put in such and such. I'm not really that bothered what I get back in return. That's not what people do. Or if you spend time, you know, again, like being in a political party, you invest your time, your energy, and possibly some finances, because you're hoping that you will then see a difference to your lifestyle, your family, you know, your country. So you're looking for some type of return. Well, these two free ports have been live now for a year, and can we find any data to tell us how they have
things are improving?
you know, how they've improved Scotland and Scotland's economy? No, we haven't. So it's not very transparent. It's very frustrating, because again they will say the UK government, which I don't class as, because there's no such thing, but that's my opinion and my thoughts. But again, they say the Scottish government are investing. Well, actually, it's our money. It's our money, and you know, even with what we're saying about Glasgow, there, those over 200 homes that could be saved with this £45 million, you know, we still have it. You know, again, even last week it was again in the news about Glasgow is still suffering from a major homelessness crisis. You know, and there's people still on a Sunday night, there's still people lining up underneath the Helaman's umbrella to get fed. That shouldn't be happening in 2025 in Scotland. This is just, and the amount, you know, I mean, and it's tier making amounts of money that is actually being splattered about in, you know, £1 billion here and 50 million here and 80 million there. It's an obscene amount of money, of public money, that is getting put into privatisation, and we're not seeing any benefit at all. You know, it would be a lot different if we were seeing it. But, you know, you're putting down things like cycle lanes. And again, one of my things that I've been doing over the past so many years, I dread to think, is about campaigning against what they're doing with the cycle lanes, because, again, they're not listening. It's a bit like what we were saying about, you know, political parties or governments not listening to the people that they're supposed to be representing. But these companies, except they're not listening to the likes of campaign groups or organisations or charities that have actually told them and given them impact assessments. You can't put this type of structure down. This is dangerous. This is a hindrance. This is actually going to prevent people like myself who's got a visual impairment, or the elderly who are maybe slightly more immobile. You're actually causing them to not be able to travel independently because of the style of structure you're putting down, and they're not listening to us. So again, they're spending millions, and I mean millions of pounds, putting down these structures that are not fit for purpose. They're hindering the average person that's wanting to use public transport or just live an independent life and walking about their community, and they can't do it safely. But they're using all that money and it's not fit for purpose. And it's exactly what's happening regarding the Freeports. We were not consulted about Freeports. There was no consultation about Freeports. It wasn't on anybody's manifesto with Freeports. We did not vote anybody into our parliament, especially the Scottish Parliament. We did not vote in any of those, whether it's Lib Dems, Conservative, doesn't matter. It wasn't in their manifestos. We did not vote them in to have these in Scotland. And we certainly weren't consulted about it.
I couldn't agree more, and honestly, I could listen there. I could talk with you all day about just how this pans out. I mean, briefly, like you, I mean, to me, it's like economics 101. It's like a lot of state taxes, a lot of our money goes into investment, and then all that happens is, to give an example, I don't know, like the internet, you know, billions of taxpayer money gets paid into it, and what's our investment return? Nothing. It gets repackaged as in a private company, and then it gets sold back to us. I think it was probably Chomsky said, "Is it socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor?" Is kind of, I think that's probably mostly correct. But for me, that's a good segue. If we could get onto, Colette, if that's all right, is now get onto the Scottish constitutional question. I mean, we could build a bigger and bigger, badder picture of Freeports, and quite conclusively. But can we go on to then the Scottish constitutional question, and see where we're coming up to these 2026 elections? Because Freeports and the way they're going on, and amongst other things, economically it's not looking good. Communities are suffering. Like you just said, these 200 houses there is a perfect example, and that will just be one example of many. So what can you give us your update on your view, or do you think it's getting more and more imperative that we literally, and I agree with you, we don't have a bleeding union, we really need to walk away? I think it's imperative. So can you give us an update on that, please, if you can, Colette?
Well, these questions are really easy today, I'm telling you. Okay, so again, with the Freeports, what I want to reiterate two things. Okay. First of all, when we talk about investment, you've got to understand that we get money back from Westminster, whether you call it Barnett consequentials, whether you call it a block grant, or whatever terminology they're using, we get our pocket money back from them. Now, the more privatisation, and that this is really important regarding coming on to the election, people have to understand that England have had Freeports for roughly about 5 years now, and there has been no economic growth to what is classed as the UK in all that time. Now, again, if with the amount of Freeports and special economic zones they have in England, you would have thought then in the 5 years that they would have been able to announce economic growth to the UK, and there hasn't been. We know that, right? So the more privatisation that happens in England, and the less public money that is being spent on public services, etc., because we get a percentage of what they pay for public services down in England. So the less that they're paying on public services, then we get less money back in our block grant. So what happens in England regarding these Freeports and private companies has a major impact on our budget. And again, then it will have a fundamental effect on our local councils, because if our block grant or our Barnett consequentials, no matter what terminology you wish to call it, if we're getting less money into our Parliament, into our Scottish Government budget, then there's going to be less money going into our local councils, and our local councils are already on their knees. So this has a major impact on us. So you have to remember that when it comes to voting. Are you willing to keep voting the same status quo and allow the privatisation and the hedge fund promoters and advocates to be able to destroy your community and destroy your local council and destroy your public services and your standard of living? You really have to start thinking outside the box a wee bit. But again, regarding the Freeports, I might have a personal opinion on the constitutional matter. The team might have their own opinion on the constitutional matter. But as a campaign, the Freeports that is happening in Scotland, it doesn't care whether you want independence or not. The companies that come and seemingly invest and take over our land and our waters don't really care. They're interested in the profit. So when it comes to Freeports, the Freeports issue and the privatisation will affect every single person that resides in Scotland. Doesn't matter what your political view is on any matter, it is going to affect your household, your family, your community, and Scotland as a whole.
Yeah.
So you do have to, this isn't about being loyal to your union or being loyal to the independence movement. This is actually starting to think more on a broader scale, look at the bigger picture. You're living in a country that is going to be decimated. The economy is going to be decimated, and it's going to affect your life. And it's, look, Eddie, I think we all know that a lot of what we are doing isn't going to, we're at an age now that we might not see too much if things go the way we want them. We're doing this for the next generations that are coming up after us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be leaving them with a country that is almost like the Highlands clearances again.
Yes.
We really don't. We want them to be. We want them to stay in Scotland. We want them to work in Scotland. We want them to have a life, a good standard of living here in Scotland. We're not doing this really for ourselves. We don't want to be leaving them in a trail of destruction. We want to try and make this a better place. So, really, when it comes to the likes of Freeports and talking about our natural energy and wanting a proper national energy company that the people of Scotland benefit from, not the City of London and not Westminster and not the private companies. This has got nothing to do with what you think constitutionally. This is about you as a person who lives in Scotland, who works in Scotland, and actually wants a good standard of living in Scotland. And it's not going to happen if we keep continuing allowing privatisation on steroids. So the election this year is really important.
I think that sums it up perfectly. I think you've absolutely spot on there. It doesn't matter what your ideology, what your beliefs. This is going to affect us all. I think we've said before. This is the biggest and clearest present danger. It's this whole hollowing out of communities through privatization, through Freeports, and that whatever. So
It's not. See, the thing is, so leading up, I think we know that leading up to 2014, there was a lot of scaremongering that was getting done about pensions and and all the rest of it. But if you thought that the case that the Better Together were putting forward for Scotland and the oil was going to run out and how would you cope independently, etc., etc. If you thought that what they were saying then was bad, well, with the Freeports and the privatisation and all the private companies that are now putting up all these wind turbines, the solar farms, battery storages, and all the rest of it. But again, we're not seeing the benefit from it. And again, a lot of the pipelines are going from a Freeport to a Freeport. So again, a lot of these revenue figures are not going to be quite as transparent. So they'll say, oh, look at that. We've got rid of Grangemouth, so we've got no refinery. So, oh, well, you're not benefiting from your gas and oil. You're not benefiting from all your wind or your tidal because everything's going down to the City of London.
Mm-hmm.
So they will put a very poor projection on our economic stability for being an independent country, but it's all a lie because it's the way that it's that deflection. Oh, look at that over there, and while you're looking over there, they're picking your pockets.
Yeah, exactly.
and that's done on purpose because, of course, they don't. We're the cash cow. They don't want us to leave. Because otherwise they would not be able to survive. And I've said this since 2014. If we were such a financial burden to England and they had to keep subsidising us.
Exactly. Like any good business, they would get rid of you. Yeah,
exactly. They wouldn't even say, never mind a referendum, just on you go. It's fine, we'll sign the contract. Off you go. So yeah, next year is a crucial because and I've said this and I know it sounds quite extreme, but I think it's came to the point that I think we do have to be quite brutal and quite extreme with what we're saying to people. This isn't just about a vote. This isn't just about party. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's not about party politics, to be fair. if we do not get people to go out and vote next year, and that's the crucial thing, one of the crucial things right now is apathy, voter apathy. I call it the apathy party, which has more members than a lot of the political parties right now. And in all seriousness, if people don't go out from that apathy party and vote, then we really probably won't have a country to be doing these podcasts and trying to fight for after 2026. And I'm really being serious with that, because we've seen what they're doing with the likes of Grangemouth and Dennis, Alexander Dennis, and all the rest of it. These are companies that are in Freeports, and they're leaving Scotland. They're going elsewhere. They're going down to England. The refineries. England don't produce oil and gas, but they've got 5 refineries. We don't have one now.
Yeah, I mean, and you're probably, I mean, it sounds to me, well, I mean, you're describing it very well to me. I mean, for instance, if someone says to me, or someone shares a meme and it says, here's Scotland, creating 115% of the energy it needs, and yet we're paying more for energy than anybody else. And people like to go, oh, we have a good moan about it, and we do in general. But what we're talking about here is essentially why that is, and it doesn't need to be like that. And like you said, until we can somehow battle that apathy, and somehow make the votes count to have some kind of influence, we are letting down our future generations. We really, really are. And I totally agree with you there, Colette. My youngest daughter's here, and I love Scotland. Just everything, the people, everything, and all we're trying to do is just try to get some modicum, try to give people some hope for the future, some aspirations, because all this at the present is dampening all that, and it just adds to the general malaise.
It does, but as I say, I think it's that, as we call it, this colonial mindset that well, that's the way it's always been. But it doesn't have to stay that way. We do have the power, and you do have the power. And I put up a lot on social media, and I'm trying to motivate people that we don't have to live in the status quo. We can't. I know that change can be quite stressful for a lot of people. It's a trigger. Like, am I doing the right thing? Again, any referendum, it's like whether it was to do with Brexit or the independence. There was a lot of people fighting over it, and people got quite stressed about it. But when you actually look at what's happening, I really have to emphasise that you do have the power to change it, but to either stay at home and not vote at all, or to spoil your ballot paper, these aren't going to help change anything in Scotland, and it's not going to change our future generations' lives, because we are just going to continue with the status quo. Now, again, I know that people say, oh, but this is the way it's always been. We're used to the Westminster structure. We're used to the past 25 years, 26 years of having devolution. But again, that's just an executive arm. We're just an executive office of Westminster. We are very limited powers. We're like the wee kid in the playground, and the teacher tells us what we can do and what we can't do, and etc. etc. So to make the change, I know it's difficult, but then when you think about, we try and say, well, there can be different types of structure. We can have a more, what we used to have, a more direct democracy type structure, like what Switzerland has. And the people have a say. They have regular referendums. They have a say. They have the power to say, no, we don't want that in our country. The people have a voice. They have an opinion. They have a voice, and they have a say. And that's rightly so. And we did have that in Scotland before this fictional union, because again, like Switzerland, we are sovereign, and in Switzerland they call themselves the sovereign. The people are the sovereign. So we can change. We can, if people just were, really got a wee bit braver and putting their ballot on other options, other alternatives, other than what they have been, again, used to.
Yeah.
we can start making that change, but unless they do it, we're going to be left, and it's just going to be the same blame game. It's going to be the same, as you say, moaning about, the cost of living, the energy costs, the states of our roads, our, transport, all these things. Whereas you have got the option now. There are new parties, there are new alliances, there's new alternatives now to just what we always had, just a one-party option. So, again, we fought for many, many years, especially women, to get a vote. And that's what we're urging, is people to actually go out and actually vote. Because we've seen in all the by-elections, even in 2023 in Rutherglen, when I stood in the Rutherglen by-election in 2023, which I can't believe that, that was nearly 2 years ago. I don't know where time is going. But, that was a very high-profile by-election after, Margaret Ferrera's situation, and, it was a very high-powered, high-profiled election, and it was a very, very low turnout. It was I think it was less than 25%. And
exactly.
and again, what we saw in the general election last year.
There, then, yes.
Yeah, the general election was a low turnout, and then the Hamilton and Larkhall one that we've just had. Yes, it was a slightly higher. It was like 44%, and I thought, initially I thought, 44%. That's actually not bad for a by-election. But then I realised that the Reform candidate and the Labour candidate who won were part of the Orange Lodge. So it was a very high turnout for a particular sector. But again, there was only really one independent candidate, and that was the SNP, and I think the Greens were there. But other than that, it was all non-independent supporting parties.
Very, 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 very interesting. Well, listen, we better wrap it up. We could carry on all day. I mean, it'd be really great as time goes on. I'd really like to get some more detail about the upcoming election and stuff, and talk a bit more about that as it comes closer and closer, because I get the distinct feeling, like yourself, it's very important, this next election. It really is. I don't know exactly what the outcomes are being. We could talk about that. But if things don't change, if we don't see some change, I think we're in real problems. Like I think you alluded to. I think we are. I think it's really, really paramount.
Yeah, I think now, before we go, I just want to say that, things are progressing. So for people that don't know, just to give them an idea, and again, we can talk about this more later on, because things are just at the starting point. But the voters have asked for years for political parties to stop, putting party first, and start working together, and come together, work together, etc. Put your party policies aside. Well, we've actually done that. So there's ISP, there's the Sovereignty Party, and the Indie for Indie group that we have came together. We have formed this political alliance called Liberate Scotland. We are in the foundation process, but already we're getting an awful lot of traction. So we're on all social, we're on Facebook, we're on X, etc. I think the website's just about ready to go, but we've already got some leaflets to hand out. We've even got flags for people to order. Go onto the socials, have a look, but this is an alliance, and we are standing in the regions, we're not stepping on each other's toes. This is about trying to get as many like-minded, independent supporting MSPs into our parliament, just a bit like what ISP was set up to do in 2021, but obviously it didn't go the way we wanted it to. So it is country before party. It's not party policy, because again, our manifesto is very small. It is independence, nothing less, nothing else. That, don't ask us about what we think on Freeports, or as an alliance. We are working together to get our independence as quickly, in whatever method we could possibly use, in whatever structure we can use to do that. So it's quite an exciting time. And again, I hope that a lot of people then who have left political parties and never really want to join another political party again, which I can understand, will then feel that they have a strong alternative to actually go out and vote for, because it's not party policy. It's for independence. We're working together. We've put our differences aside, and it's only for the one goal and the one aim. And I think that's actually really quite refreshing in politics, that we're not doing the blame game, where we're not fighting, we're not competing, we're actually putting our differences. And again, even one of the candidates that was a sovereignty candidate, he actually stepped aside on his constituency, because we are standing in constituencies as well as region, but he actually stood aside in his constituency when Fergus Ewing decided that he was going to be standing as an independent next year. So again, it's about not stepping on each other's toes. So he's went and he's going to stand in a different constituency, because we understand that this is the time now. It's too important, it's too crucial that we need to all start working together, and that's what we've done. So I hope that actually starts to motivate voters, and I wanted to kind of end on a positive, Eddie, because what we've discussed today, it can be quite depressing, and it can be quite hard hitting and mind numbing. It's a lot to process. So I thought we would end on a positive, that there is alternatives, and I hope it galvanates the movement, that they will come out and they feel that they can come out and campaign with us, because it's for the one thing, and it's not about a particular party, and it's not about a particular person. It's about the independence movement as a whole.
Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah, maybe in our next episode, I'd like to maybe get a bit more into that, because I know there is people, quite a few people who would say, the only way is through the SNP, but at the same time, they admit themselves they don't have any confidence that the SNP is going to do this. And then I think to myself, and then you go, but the new parties are not going to catch traction. It's blah blah blah. And to me, I look upon it as like, well, at least that way it's being proactive and they're trying to do something. It's like, why am I going to back a three-legged horse? And it's not going to win the race. I just and what you say about as well, it's like, being in an independent country. I mean, I remember hearing this back in 2014, hearing people say this, and they're so right. It's like being a parent. It's like being a human being. It's like growing up. It's like, I want to be able to make my own mistakes. I don't have we don't have the answers, and we don't pretend to have the answers. So when somebody says, "Oh, what are you going to do in independent Scotland that's going to be better?" I don't have the answers, but I have more faith that collectively we'll find better answers than what we're having to put up with now. To me, it's a no-brainer. But anyway,
what we are saying is, we are given. I've said this a couple of times over the past couple of years, and it's actually now been used again with Liberate Scotland, which it works. It flows quite well. That I've said for a long time that a lot of people, if they go to view a property and it's got old-fashioned furniture and it's cluttered, and they can't, some people just can't see what this property could look like when all of that's been taken out and it's a blank canvas, and how then they would decorate and furnish and make it their home, but some people can't have that don't have that visualization.
I get,
and
I don't like the carpets.
It's a bit like independence. It's like they can't see, because again, it's like, it's always been like this. It's that colonial mindset. So if people can't see how an independent country could or should maybe look like, but what we are saying as Liberate Scotland is, we're giving you the keys to the door, and we're allowing you to move in, but we're not decorating your property for you.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's very good.
Right, we're giving you the key to the door. We'll allow you to move in, but then it's up to you, because again, part of ISP, but again, it's a thing that we've spoke about with Liberate Scotland. We're going down more the direct democracy, that people will have a say on your national energy companies or your social security, whether we go down a universal basic income route or do we change our voting system? There's all these different things that we can have a say on. And that is fundamental. And again, really, when it comes down to it, the people really should have a say. And so things can change if you allow that change to be made. But, we're not saying, I know that ISP, we've got our own manifesto because we are a political party, but what we do is we look at different models from different countries. We look and see, well, that works really quite well with them, but maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe part of that wouldn't work so well in Scotland because of our demographic or geographic structure. How could we maybe tweak that a wee bit? But our manifesto, and I don't think any political party's manifesto really should be about saying, this is what we are going to demand if we get elected in. It's a visualisation to say, this is potentially what you could have. These are ideas that we think are potentially quite good if we were an independent Scotland. It's not a demand that this is what we are going to impose or enforce on you. It's just to give you ideas of the different things that are available as an independent country that we don't have right now.
An invitation to engage, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And get, and it's almost like leading up to the 2014 when people came together and, and everybody who maybe supports independence will all have different views on what we want, whether it's, on defence or in the environment, all these, but that's called democracy. That's engagement. That's having good conversations and good, discussions. And again, I said at Bannockburn when I was speaking at Bannockburn at the All Under One banner, I had a couple of people, one Eva Comrie from Indie for Indie and Alan McManus from Sovereignty, because again, we wanted to show that we were already coming together and sharing a platform. But what I said was, especially at Bannockburn and the Battle of Bannockburn, at that point, the clans came together and they won the battle.
Yeah.
And that, the McDonald's and the Campbells and that, they came together. And it was, and as Eva said, it was the small people that they came together. Everybody, they all, didn't matter what your political view was.
Yeah.
It was for Scotland and they won the battle.
Yeah.
So again, I'm ending on a very positive note that, the clans came together and it's time for us to come together. And that's what Liberate Scotland is doing. And I hope people really start to support it and get behind it.
And it goes back to the early days of the referendum. I remember, and when I first really thought about what was termed civic nationalism. This is it. Civic nationalism is the way forward, because otherwise there is no way forward.
Exactly. So just think about the clans coming together and what they achieved, and we can achieve it. It just takes that wee bit of bravery to do it, and I understand that, but. Let's go out with one big fight. Let's try and have another fight with them, and get our independence and get us in control again.
No worries. Brilliant. Listen, as always, really a pleasure talking to you, Colette.
Thank you for having me.
Have you what dates have you got upcoming? What can you tell our viewers? Is there anything happening shortly that people might?
Well, again, we've got the Freeports meetings coming up. We've got Aberdeen in a couple of weeks' time. And we've got the All Under One banner is in Edinburgh in September, but there's always things popping up. A couple of weeks ago I was speaking at the Pensioners for Indie meeting, etc. So there's things happening, all the time. As I say, things are starting to get quite busy, but in a good way, in a positive way. I'd be a wee bit worried if we weren't getting invited to speak at things and go to events, etc. But I would like, maybe, we're in the summer holidays just now, maybe it might ease off for a couple of weeks, have a wee bit of a recess, hopefully, and then when we come back, August, September, then it'll be really kind of more full on. But the Freeports are still going to continue to the end of this year anyway. It will slow down a little bit for me. We'll still be there, but the election campaign is going to take up a lot of my time because I'm a candidate, plus I'm the leader of the party. So I'm going to be looking after my candidates in the campaign as and again working with Liberate Scotland. So there's going to be a lot going on next year. So the Freeports it will still be spoken about, it will still be there, but not with the public meetings as such. You know, we're quite willing to come and speak at venues and things, but we won't be doing what we've been doing, travelling the country, doing public meetings to the extent that we have been. But yeah, it's all good, Eddie. Keeping me out of trouble, let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, listen, I thank you very much for the time and just letting us all know. Hopefully, you know, this it'll go around and it'll grow, because when people make an effort, the will to power, it does grow. And once again, thank you for all your endeavours and all the people working with you. I think it's very noble, and I look forward to catching up with you very soon and see what's happening, because like you said, time goes so quick. May's going to be upon us before we can. Yes, big time. So I'll say goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much to Colette, and we shall see you again soon. Thank you very much, Colette.
Thanks, Eddie.